Hare Krishna. So we will begin today's reading of Shrimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namah नमः ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमो महावदान्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरत्विषे नमः हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे okay. So we were reading Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, and it is introduction part. In that, we were reading a short sketch of the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the preacher of Shrimad Bhagavatam. We have come up to this paragraph. Yeah, now we will begin with here. Once Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Haridas Thakur were walking down a main road, and on the way they saw a roaring crowd assembled. Upon inquiring from passerby, they understood that two brothers named Jagai and Madhai were creating a public disturbance in a drunken state. They also heard that these two brothers were born in a respectable Brahmana family, but because of low association, they had turned into debauchers, debauchees of the worst type. They were not only drunkards but also meat eaters, woman hunters, dacoits, and sinners of all description. Sri Nityananda Prabhu heard all of these stories and decided that these two fallen souls must be the first to be delivered. If they were delivered from their sinful life, then the good name of Lord Chaitanya would be even still more glorified. Thinking in this way, Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas pushed their way through the crowd and asked the two brothers to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. The drunken brothers became enraged upon this request and attacked Nityananda Prabhu with filthy language. Both brothers chased them a considerable distance. In the evening, the report of the preaching work was submitted to the Lord, and he was glad to learn that Nityananda and Haridas had attempted to deliver such a stupid pair of fellows. The next day, Nityananda Prabhu went to see the brothers, and as soon as he approached them, one of them threw a piece of earthen pot at him. They struck him on the forehead, and immediately blood began to flow. But Nityananda Prabhu was so kind that instead of protesting this heinous act, he said, "It does not matter that you have thrown this stone at me. I still request you to chant the holy name of the Lord Hari." One of the brothers, Jagai, was astonished to see this behavior of Nityananda Prabhu, and he at once fell down at his feet and asked him to pardon his sinful brother. When Madhai again attempted to hurt Nityananda Prabhu, Jagai stopped him and implored him to fall down at his feet. In the meantime, the news of Nityananda's injury reached the Lord, who at once hurried to the spot in a and angry mood. Fiery and angry mood. The Lord immediately invoked his Sudarshana Chakra, the Lord's ultimate weapon, shaped like a bell, to kill the sinners. But Nityananda Prabhu reminded him of his mission. The mission of the Lord was to deliver the hopelessly fallen souls of Kali Yuga, and the brothers Jagai and Madhai were typical examples of these fallen souls. 90% of the population of this age resembles these brothers despite high birth and mundane respectability. According to the verdict of the revealed scriptures, the total population of the world in this age will be of the lowest Shudra quality or even lower. It should be noted that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never acknowledged the stereotyped caste system by birthright. Rather, he strictly followed the verdict of the Shastras in the matter of one's Swarupa or real identity. When the Lord was invoking his Sudarshana Chakra and Sri Nityananda Prabhu was imploring him to forgive the two brothers, both the brothers fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord and begged his pardon for their gross behavior. The Lord was also asked by Nityananda Prabhu to accept these repenting souls, and the Lord agreed to accept them on one condition, that they henceforward completely give up all their sinful activities and habits of debauchery. Both the brothers agreed and promised to give up all their sinful habits, and the kind Lord accepted them and did not again refer to their past misdeeds. This is the specific kindness of Lord Chaitanya. In this age, no one can say that he is free from sin. It is impossible for anyone to say this, but Lord Chaitanya accepts all kinds of sinful persons on the one condition that they promise not to indulge in sinful habits after being spiritually initiated by the bona fide spiritual master. There are a number of instructive points to be observed in this incident of the two brothers. In this Kali Yuga, practically all people are of the quality of Jagai and Madhai. If they want to be relieved from the reactions of their misdeeds, they must take shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and after spiritual initiation, thus refrain from those things which are prohibited in the Shastras. The prohibitory rules are dealt with in the Lord's teachings to Srila Rupa Goswami. During his householder life, the Lord did not display many of the miracles which are generally expected from such personalities, but he did once perform a wonderful miracle in the house of Srinivas Thakur while Sankirtana was in full swing. He asked the devotees what they wanted to eat, and when he was informed that they wanted to eat mangoes, he asked for a seed of a mango. Although this fruit was out of season, when the seed was brought to him, he sowed it in the yard of Srinivas, and at once a creeper began to grow out of the seed. Within no time, this creeper became a full grown mango tree, heavy with more ripened fruits than the devotees could eat. The tree remained in Srinivas's yard, and from then on, the devotees used to take as many mangoes from the tree as they wanted. The Lord had a very high estimation of the affections of the dancers of Rajabhumi, Vrindavan, or Krishna. And in appreciation of their unalloyed service to the Lord, once Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted the holy names of the gopis, cowherd girls, instead of the names of the Lord. At this time, some of his students, who were also disciples, came to see him, and when they saw that the Lord was chanting the names of the gopis, they were astonished. Out of sheer foolishness, they asked the Lord why he was chanting the names of the gopis and advised him to chant the name of Krishna. The Lord, who was in ecstasy, was thus disturbed by these foolish students. He chastised them and chased them away. The students were almost the same age as the Lord, and thus they wrongly thought of the Lord as one of their peers. They held a meeting and resolved that they would attack the Lord if he dared to punish them again in such a way, such a manner. This incident provoked some malicious talks about the Lord on the part of the general public. When the Lord became aware of this, he began to consider the various types of men found in society. He noted that especially the students, professors, spiritual workers, yogis, non-devotees, and different types of atheists were all opposed to the devotional service of the Lord. My mission is to deliver all the fallen souls of this age, he thought. But if they commit offenses against me, thinking me to be an ordinary man, they will not benefit. If they are to begin their life of spiritual realization, they must some way or other offer obeisances unto me. Thus, the Lord decided to accept the renounced order of life, sannyasa, because people in general were inclined to offer respects to a sannyasi. 500 years ago, the condition of society was not as degraded as it is today. At that time, people would show respects to a sannyasi, and the sannyasi was rigid in following the rules and regulations of the renounced order of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not very much in favor of the renounced order of life in this age of Kali, but that was only for the reason that very few sannyasis in this age are able to observe the rules and regulations of sannyasa life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to accept the order and become an ideal sannyasi so that the general populace would show him respect. One is duty bound to show respect to a sannyasi, for a sannyasi is considered to be the master of all varnas and ashramas. While he was contemplating accepting the sannyasa order, it so happened that Keshav Bharati, a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school and resident of Katwa in Bengal, visited Navadip and was invited to dine with the Lord. When Keshav Bharati came to his house, the Lord asked him to award him the sannyasa order of life. This was a matter of formality. The sannyasa order is to be accepted from another sannyasi. Although the Lord was independent in all respects, still, to keep up the formalities of the Shastras, he accepted the sannyasa order from Keshav Bharati, although Keshav Bharati was not in the Vaishnava Sampradaya school. After consulting with Keshav Bharati, the Lord left Navadip for Katwa to formally accept the sannyasa order of life. He was accompanied by Srila Nityananda Prabhu, Chandrasekhar Acharya, and Mukunda Datta. These three assisted him in the details of the ceremony. The incident of the Lord's accepting the sannyasa order is very elaborately described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. Thus, at the end of his 24th year, the Lord accepted the sannyasa order of life in the month of Magha. After accepting this order, he became a full-fledged preacher of the Bhagavad Dharma. Although he was doing the same preaching work in his household life, when he experienced some obstacles to his preaching, he sacrificed even the comfort of his home life for the sake of the fallen souls. In his household life, his chief assistants were Srila Advaita Prabhu and Srila Shivas Thakur. But after he accepted the sannyasa order, his chief assistants became Srila Nityananda Prabhu, who was deputed to preach specifically in Bengal, and the six Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, headed by Sri Rupa and Sanatan, who were deputed to go to Vrindavan to excavate the present places of pilgrimage. The present city of Vrindavana and the importance of Brajabhumi were thus disclosed by the will of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord, after accepting the sannyasa order, at once wanted to start for Vrindavan. For 3 continuous days, he traveled in the Radha Desh. places where the Ganges does not follow. Ganges does not flow. He was in full ecstasy over the idea of going to Vrindavan. However, Sri Nityananda diverted his path and brought him instead to the house of Advaita Prabhu in Shantipur. The Lord stayed at Sri Advaita Prabhu's house for a few days, and knowing well that the Lord was leaving his hearth and home for good, Sri Advaita Prabhu sent his men to Navadip to bring Mother Shachi to have a last meeting with her son. Some unscrupulous people say that Lord Chaitanya met his wife also after taking sannyasa and offered her his wooden sleeper for worship. But the authentic sources give no information about such a meeting. His mother met him at the house of Advaita Prabhu, and when she saw her son in sannyasa dress, she lamented. By way of compromise, she requested her son to make his headquarters in Puri so that she would easily be able to get information about him. The Lord granted this last desire of his beloved mother. After this incident, the Lord started for Puri, leaving all the residents of Navadvipa in an ocean of lamentation over his separation. The Lord visited many important places on the way to Puri. He visited the temple of Gopinathji, who had stolen condensed milk for his devotee Sri Madhvendra Puri. Since then, deity Gopinathji is well known as Kshirakshore Gopinath. The Lord relished this story with great pleasure. The propensity of stealing is there even in the absolute consciousness, but because this propensity is exhibited by the absolute, it loses its perverted nature and thus becomes worshipable even by Lord Chaitanya on the basis of the absolute consideration that the Lord and his stealing propensity are one and identical. This interesting story of Gopinathji is vividly explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. After visiting the temple of Khirchor Gopinath of Remuna at Balasore in Orissa, the Lord proceeded towards Puri and on the way visited the temple of Sakshi Gopal, who appeared as a witness in the matter of two Brahmana devotees' family quarrel. The Lord heard the story of Sakshi Gopal with great pleasure because he wanted to impress upon the atheist that the worshipable deities in the temples approved by the great acharyas are not idols, as alleged by men with a poor fund of knowledge. The deity in the temple is the Archa, incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and thus the deity is identical with the Lord in all respects. He responds to the proportion of the devotee's affection for him. In the story of Sakshi Gopal, in which there was a family misunderstanding by two devotees of the Lord, in order to mitigate the turmoil as well as to show specific favor to his servitors, traveled from Vrindavan to Vidyanagar, a village in Orissa, in the form of his Archa incarnation. From there, the deity was brought to Cuttack, and thus the temple of Sakshi Gopal is even today visited by thousands of pilgrims on the way to Jagannath Puri. The Lord stayed overnight there and began to proceed towards Puri. On the way, his sannyasa rod was broken by Nityananda Prabhu. The Lord became apparently angry with him about this and went alone to Puri, leaving his companions behind. At Puri, when he entered the temple of Jagannath, he became at once saturated with transcendental ecstasy and fell down on the floor of the temple unconscious. The custodians of the temple could not understand the transcendental feats of the Lord, but there was a great learned Pandita named as Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya who was present, and he could understand that the Lord's losing his consciousness upon entering the Jagannath temple was not an ordinary thing. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, who was the chief appointed Pandit in the court of the king of Orissa, Maharaj Prataprudra, was attracted by the youthful luster of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and could understand that such a transcendental trance was only rarely exhibited and only then by the topmost devotees who are already on the transcendental plane in complete forgetfulness of material existence. Only a liberated soul could show such a transcendental feat, and the Bhattacharya who was vastly learned, could understand this in the light of the transcendental literature with which he was familiar. He therefore asked the custodians of the temple not to disturb the unknown sannyasi. He asked them to take the Lord to his home so he could be further observed in his unconscious state. The Lord was at once carried to the home of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, who at that time had sufficient power of authority due to his being the Sabha Pandit, or the state dean of faculty in Sanskrit literature. The learned Pandita wanted to scrutinizingly test the transcendental feats of Lord Chaitanya because often unscrupulous devotees imitate physical feats in order to flaunt transcendental achievements just to attract innocent people and take advantage of them. A learned scholar like the Bhattacharya can detect such impostors, and when he finds them out, he at once rejects them. In the case of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhattacharya tested all the symptoms in the light of the Shastras. He tested as a scientist, not as a foolish sentimentalist. He observed the movement of the stomach, the beating of the heart, and the breathing of the nostrils. He also felt the pulse of the Lord and saw that all his bodily activities were in complete suspension. When he put a small cotton swab before the nostrils, he found that there was a slight breathing as the fine fibers of cotton moved slightly. Thus he came to know that the Lord's unconscious trance was genuine, and he began to treat him in the prescribed fashion. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could only be treated in a special way. He would respond only to the resounding of the holy names of the Lord by his devotees. This special treatment was unknown to Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya because the Lord was still unknown to him. When the Bhattacharya saw him for the first time in the temple, he simply took him to be one of many pilgrims. In the meantime, the companions of the Lord who reached the temple a little after him heard of the Lord's transcendental feats and of his being carried away by the Bhattacharya. The pilgrims at the temple were still gossiping about the incident. But by chance, one of these pilgrims had met Gopinath Acharya, who was known to Gadadhar Pandit, and from him it was learned that the Lord was lying in an unconscious state at the residence of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, who happened to be the brother-in-law of Gopinath Acharya. All the members of the party were introduced by Gadadhar Pandit to Gopinath Acharya, who took them all to the house of Bhattacharya, where the Lord was lying unconscious in a spiritual trance. All the members then chanted loudly the holy name of the Lord Hari as usual, and the Lord regained his consciousness. After this, Bhattacharya received all the members of the party, including Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and asked them to become his guests of honor. The party, including the Lord, went for a bath in the sea, and the Bhattacharya arranged for their residence and meals at the house of Kashi Mishra. Gopinath Acharya, his brother-in-law, also assisted. There was some friendly talks about the Lord's divinity between the two brothers-in-law. And in this argument, Gopinath Acharya, who knew the Lord before, now tried to establish the Lord as the personality of Godhead, and the Bhattacharya tried to establish him as one of the great devotees. Both of them argued from the angle of vision of authentic Shastras and not on the strength of sentimental vox populi. The incarnations of God are determined by authentic Shastras and not by popular oaths of foolish fanatics. Because Lord Chaitanya was an incarnation of God, in fact, foolish fanatics have proclaimed so many so-called incarnations of God in this age without referring to authentic scriptures. But Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya or Gopinath Acharya did not indulge in such foolish sentimentalism. On the contrary, both of them tried to establish or reject his divinity on the strength of authentic Shastras. Later, it was disclosed that Bhattacharya also came from the Navadip area, and it was understood from him that Nilambar Chakravarti, the maternal grandfather of Lord Chaitanya, happened to be a class fellow of the father of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. In that sense, the young sannyasi Lord Chaitanya evoked paternal affection from Bhattacharya. Bhattacharya was the professor of many sannyasis in the order of the Sankaracharya Sampradaya, and he himself also belonged to that cult. As such, the Bhattacharya desired that the young sannyasi Lord Chaitanya also hear from him about the teachings of Vedanta. Those who are followers of the Sankara cult are generally known as Vedantis. This does not, however, mean that Vedanta is a monopoly study of the Shankara Sampradaya. Vedanta is studied by the Lord, by the bona fide Sampradaya, but they have their own interpretations. But those in the Shankara Sampradaya are generally known to be ignorant of the knowledge of the Vedantis Vaishnavas. For this reason, the Bhaktivedanta title was first offered to the author by the Vaishnavas. The Lord agreed to take lessons from Bhattacharya on the Vedanta, and they sat together in the temple of Lord Jagannath. The Bhattacharya went on speaking continually for 7 days, and the Lord heard him with all attention and did not interrupt. The Lord's silence raised some doubts in Bhattacharya's heart, and he asked the Lord how it was that he did not ask anything or comment on his explanations of Vedanta. The Lord posed himself before the Bhattacharya as a free student and pretended that he heard the Vedanta from him because the Bhattacharya felt that this was the duty of a sannyasi. But the Lord did not agree with his lectures. By these, the Lord indicated that the so-called Vedantis amongst the Sankara Sampradaya or any other Sampradaya who do not follow the instructions of Sri Vyasadeva are mechanical students of the Vedanta. They are not fully aware of that great knowledge. The explanation of the Vedanta Sutra is given by the author himself in the text of Shrimad Bhagavatam. One who has no knowledge of the Bhagavatam will hardly be able to know what the Vedanta says. The Bhattacharya, being a vastly learned man, could follow the Lord's sarcastic remarks on the popular Vedantis. He therefore asked him why he did not ask about any point which he could not follow. The Bhattacharya could understand the purpose of his dead silence for the days he heard him. This showed clearly that the Lord had something else in mind. Thus, the Bhattacharya requested him to disclose his mind. Upon this, the Lord spoke as follows: My dear sir, I can understand the meaning of the sutras like Janmadi Asyataha, Shastra Yonitvat, and Athato Brahma Jigyasa of the Vedanta Sutra. But when you explain them in your own way, it becomes difficult for me to follow them. The purpose of the sutras is already explained in them, but your explanations are covering them with something else. You do not purposely take the direct meaning of the sutras, but indirectly give your own interpretations. The Lord thus attacked all Vedantis who interpret the Vedanta Sutra fashionably according to their limited power of thinking to serve their own purpose. Such indirect interpretations of the authentic literatures like the Vedanta Sutra are hereby condemned by the Lord. The Lord continued, Sri Vyasadeva has summarized the direct meanings of the mantras in the Upanishads in the Vedanta Sutra. Unfortunately, you do not take their direct meaning. You indirectly interpret them in a different way. The authority of the Vedas is unchangeable and stands without any question of doubt. And whatever is stated in the Vedas must be accepted completely. Otherwise, one challenges the authority of the Vedas. The conch shell and cow dung are bone and stool of two living beings, but because they have been recommended by the Vedas as pure, people accept them as such because of the authority of the Vedas. The idea is that one cannot set his imperfect reason above the authority of the Vedas. The orders of the Vedas must be obeyed as they stand, without any mundane reasoning. The so-called followers of the Vedic injunctions make their own interpretations of the Vedic injunctions, and thus they establish different parties and sects of the Vedic religion. Lord Buddha directly denied the authority of the Vedas and he established his own religion. Only for this reason, the Buddhist religion was not accepted by the strict followers of the Vedas. But those who are so-called followers of the Vedas are more harmful than the Buddhists. The Buddhists have the courage to deny the Vedas directly, but the so-called followers of the Vedas have no courage to deny the Vedas. Although indirectly they disobey all the injunctions of the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya condemned this. The examples given by the Lord of the conch shell and the cow dung are very much appropriate in this connection. If one argues that since cow dung is pure, the stool of a learned Brahmana is still more pure, his argument will not be accepted. Cow dung is accepted and the stool of a highly posted Brahmana is rejected. The Lord continued. The Vedic injunctions are self-authorized. And if some mundane creature adjusts the interpretations of the Vedas, he defies their authority. It is foolish to think of oneself as more intelligent than Shri Vashdev. He has already expressed himself in his sutras, and there is no need of help from personalities of lesser importance. His work, the Vedanta Sutra, is dazzling as the midday sun. And when someone tries to give his own interpretations on the self-effulgent sun like Vedanta Sutra, he attempts to cover this sun with the cloud of his imagination. The Vedas and Puranas are one and the same in purpose. They ascertain the absolute truth, which is greater than everything else. The absolute truth is ultimately realized as the absolute personality of Godhead with absolute controlling power. As such, the absolute personality of Godhead must be completely full of opulence, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Yet, the transcendental personality of Godhead is astonishingly ascertained as impersonal. The impersonal description of the absolute truth in the Vedas is given to nullify the mundane conception of the absolute whole. Personal features of the Lord are completely different from all kinds of mundane features. The living entities are all individual persons and they are all parts and parcels of the supreme whole. If the parts and parcels are individual persons, the source of their emanation must not be impersonal. He is the supreme person amongst all the relative persons. The Vedas inform us that from him, Brahman, everything emanates, and on him everything rests. And after annihilation, everything merges in him only. Therefore, he is the ultimate dative, causative, and accommodating cause of all causes. And these causes cannot be attributed to an impersonal object. The Vedas inform us that he alone became many, and when he so desires, he glances over material nature. Before he glanced over material nature, there was no material cosmic creation. Therefore, his glance is not material. Material mind or senses were unborn when the Lord glanced over material nature. Thus, evidence in the Vedas proves that beyond a doubt, the Lord has transcendental eyes and a transcendental mind. They are not material. His impersonality, therefore, is a negation of his materiality, but not a denial of his transcendental personality. Okay, so we will stop today and we'll continue in the next session. Thank you very much. हरे कृष्णा जय जय श्री प्रभुपाद की जय गौर भक्तवृंद की जय।